Hi, I'm Marisol Jimenez. At the time this story begins, I was 36 and an on-staff obstetrician at a hospital outside of Columbus, Ohio. I'm going to tell you about how I discovered that I was actually the side chick and not the fiancée I believed I was, and it was the daughter I shared with my ex who pointed it out to me. Before I begin, please help the channel by giving my story a thumbs up, a comment, or sharing it with others. My favorite color is red, so drop that color's book emoji and where in the world you are. I'd love to know how far my story stretched. I usually deliver babies overnight while the patient's doctor slept or attended to another patient. When I had a 12-hour shift, my parents watched over my 3 babies in my 4-bedroom home that originally belonged to my paternal grandmother, who left it to me when she passed 10 years ago. At the end of a shift, I was charting birth details when my phone buzzed with a photo from my mother. The beach at dusk, a smear of tangerine over the Gulf. Florida's waiting. 4 days to go, the caption said. I smiled into the pale light of the postpartum ward and kept writing. In OB, you learn to remain calm amidst other people's storms. Contractions, alarms, tears, laughter, a new cry carving the air. I never imagined I'd be the one losing rhythm. My parents, my 3 kids, and I landed in Tampa on a Saturday. Becca was 9 and, as always, solemn and watchful. Carter, our little troublemaker at 6, and Luke, 5 and always sticky-fingered, were both overly excited about spending time at the beach. We were there for sand, cheap souvenirs, and a week where nobody paged me. My fiancé, Anthony Reardon, was across the country. Training, he texted, a flag emoji and a saluting face, the shorthand of an army man who was always on tour, always between flights, always almost home. He never asked where we were going, and because he wasn't joining us, I didn't volunteer the information. At this point, I was beyond tired of rolling over in bed to a cold pillow. On the 3rd day, we ran out of sunscreen, snacks, and patience. I took the kids to the grocery store with my father, who insisted on driving even though every rental car confuses him. We were in the cereal aisle debating between cartoon leprechauns and colorful rings when Becca went still. She has a nurse's silence when she's worried. A sudden hush that pulls a room taut. Mom, she whispered, pointing. Daddy came with a friend. He just kissed her like he kisses you. What? My scalp went cold. I followed her gesture, and there he was, the man who'd whispered to my belly through my pregnancies, who'd painted the boys' shared room a pale blue, who'd missed holidays because the base is a jealous mistress, who proposed over takeout pad thai with a ring that made my mother gasp. He was lifting a toddler into a cart, his hands gentle and practiced. Beside him stood a giggling woman studying the display of condiments about my height, hair pulled into the same tired ponytail I wear on double shifts. Around them, 3 more kids stair-stepped in ages with mine. Becca tugged my sleeve. Should I go say hi? Anthony turned to look at something the woman was pointing toward. For a second he didn't see us. When he finally did, a recognition like a flinch crossed his face and vanished. His jaw squared. Anthony, I called, my voice coming out in the register I use for a mother in transition, calm above panic. Babe. He blinked once, twice, then set his mouth into a soldier's line. I don't know you, miss, he said sternly. The words were flat as a lid. Becca made a sound like air leaving a balloon. But Daddy. I am not your father, he snapped, and my daughter stepped behind me as if scorched. The woman at his side frowned. Tony? What's going on? Who is that woman? Anthony put a hand on her cart, anchoring himself. Recruitment, probably, he said to me, eyes scalding. They follow soldiers sometimes. Try to get us to sign things. He tilted his chin toward the ceiling, toward the fluorescent hum. I'm already on active duty and on tour most of the year. Do not follow me again. It was such a clumsy lie that I almost laughed. Florida air thickened in my lungs. My boys watched me with round, unchecked trust. My father had gone very quiet, his hand tightening on the cart handle until his knuckles blanched. What tour? His female companion said with confusion. You retired a year ago. I was also muddled. Retired? A year ago? Anthony, I called. Go away, he demanded, his snarl low as he quickly moved away. No, damn it, I said, and my voice dropped the softness I keep for labor and landed on steel. Stop lying in front of my children. Your children, Anthony. People were peeking around pallets of paper towels now. The other woman, her eyes big, ring finger heavy, looked from my face to Becca's and back. Something in the symmetry must have clicked. She set her lips and pushed past him. "Hi," she said to me, polite like a nurse handing off a patient at shift change, while her eyes swept me from head to toe. "I'm Crystal Reardon, Tony's wife." I sized her up too, my breath constricted. "Marisol Jimenez," I said because saying my name out loud felt like throwing a rope around myself in a storm. I thought I was his fiancée and that he hated that nickname. Crystal stared at Becca's face. Obviously seeing the familiarity with her and Anthony, she said to me, "We should talk but not here." "Agreed," I said, and right there in front of the cereal we set a time and place, because women are always making plans in aisles and offices and parking lots while men improvise with fire. I glared at Anthony, who stayed with the other children, then left without buying anything. My dad dropped me off at our hotel and went to another store by himself, even though Becca asked him to take her with him. I met Crystal the next morning on wet sand behind our hotel, where gulls screamed like babies and the tide gently swept over our feet. We sat and told each other the basics. Crystal disclosed that she had 4 kids with Tony, as she called him. The ages lined up with my 3 like teeth in a zipper. TJ was 7, Everett was 6, Walker was 4 and Colin was 2. She said that he had proposed to her in a chain restaurant too, in a different city, but the same kind of ring. He had reasons for everything: a schedule too busy to pierce, a rank he wore like armor. He took different highways to the same home, it seems. If he's absent with you too, I wonder. Do you think there's another woman? I mean, he retired a year ago, but he's never home. He surprised us yesterday when he walked in the door. I looked out at the horizon. Until yesterday I didn't think you were in the picture, but I guess it's possible. How many kids could he possibly have? I asked him once, she said, raking a finger through the sand, how he can be so gone and still so present. He said the army makes men out of shadows. He's not army, I said. He's a con with a surplus store account. Crystal's mouth twitched. A grief smile, the face you make when truth is ugly and late. I still love him, she said, not for effect, just because it was true and she had nothing else to hold. I still love the man he pretended to be, I said. But that man lied to my daughter's face and denied being a party to her existence. There is no way we could ever repair whatever we were, and I'd never want to try. We were quiet for a long time, listening to the wash and gather of water. She rubbed her thumb over her ring until the skin went white. I need time, she said. My kids. I need time. Understandable, I said. But I need to disprove his lies. He's not going to get away with this, nor will he easily. I hope you're prepared for that if you stay with him. I wouldn't expect anything less, because that would be the route I'd take if I were in your shoes, Marisol. I'll have him submit his DNA whenever you start the process. When I returned to our suite, my mom said she decided to take the kids to Disney, and away from all the drama she believed was about to occur. I hurriedly packed and had us checked out in 20 minutes. I didn't want to see Anthony yet. I needed to distract my children from what they witnessed, and a 2-hour drive was a good start, especially after I booked the last-minute arrival and gave them my tablet that showed where we would be staying. I tried to enjoy the park, but I just couldn't concentrate. I was grateful my parents took charge of the children and left me to my thoughts. I had a good long cry the first day there and called the hospital where I worked. Citing a family emergency that was going to take a while to resolve, I requested another week off. I needed to gather myself before returning to work. When we arrived home in Ohio, I was a frazzled mess. It hurt me to my core to find out I was the side chick. Immediately, I filed for a temporary restraining order because I felt that Anthony wasn't going to be any good around my babies. The DNA test was easy. A swab, a form, and a waiting period that stretched my days like taffy. The results arrived in a thin envelope that felt heavier than my twins at birth. Probability of paternity: 99.99% for all 3 children, as I knew it would be. Anthony was my first and only lover. Before him, all I wanted was to finish school, so I rebuffed all advances from men until Anthony strolled into my life one late night. During my 4th year of medical school, I tapped my pen against my textbook, the steady rhythm matching my heartbeat as I studied the reproductive system again. The library at the USF Morsani College of Medicine in Tampa was quiet except for the occasional turning of pages and soft tapping of keyboards. 3 exams in 1 week. 2 clinical rotations. 1 very sleep-deprived medical student, and that was me. I glanced at my watch and groaned when I saw that it was approaching midnight. The coffee I'd consumed hours ago was wearing off, and the words on the page were beginning to blur. Just as I considered packing up, my phone vibrated. The text was from my roommate, future general surgeon, Elena. "We need food, babe. I'm outside. Get your ass out here. No excuses." 20 minutes later, I found myself at a diner near campus, forcing myself to eat something other than protein bars and caffeine for the first time that day. That night, I chose a grilled chicken sandwich and fries. "We can't keep this up," Elena said, slowly eating minestrone. "Med school is important, but so is being human. I miss my boyfriend." I was about to respond when the bell above the diner door jingled. 3 men in civilian clothes walked in, their military haircuts and perfect posture giving them away immediately. "Ooh, nice," Elena mumbled. "Did I mention that I missed my boyfriend?" One of them, tall with broad shoulders and warm brown eyes, caught my gaze and smiled. I quickly looked away, returning to my sandwich and ignoring the laughing men. The next morning I was back in the library after waking late. This time I was reviewing the symptoms of preeclampsia when someone sat down across from me. I looked up to find the same man from the diner. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice low and respectful of the library's quiet. "Hi. I'm Anthony Reardon. I saw you at the diner last night." I blinked, momentarily forgetting about high blood pressure during pregnancy. "I'm Marisol Jimenez. A Latina," he smiled. I nodded. "You. Irish, we believe. So, I know this is forward, but I'm only on leave for 2 weeks before heading back to Fort Bragg. Would you like to get coffee sometime?" I hesitated. Dating wasn't exactly in my curriculum. "I understand if you're too busy," he added, noticing my hesitation. "Medical textbooks," he nodded toward the table. "That's impressive." I frowned at him. "How did you find me?" Another charming smile. "I cornered your friend while you were in the restroom at the diner. I gave her my number and asked her to text me where I could find you when you were the least busy." Something about his expression and respect for my studies made me reconsider. "I have to be at the hospital for the rest of the week, so how about Saturday? I can meet you at the diner." Anthony smiled. 10 is perfect," I agreed. "I'll let you get back to it." Anthony stood. "See you on Saturday." Coffee turned into breakfast, and that led to a walk through the park where Anthony told me he was 28, hated being called Tony, about his 9 years in the army, his deployments including the latest one to Afghanistan, and how he was now training recruits. I shared my journey through medical school, my dream of becoming an obstetrician, and the pressure I put on myself to succeed. "Why obstetrics, Mari? Is that because of your parents? Are they doctors?" "My father is a police officer in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio," I explained. "My mom is a kindergarten teacher who suffered infertility after me, so I want to help women have all the babies they desire and healthily." "That's a noble mission," Anthony said softly. "My dad is remarried in Texas with 2 other kids, but I'm my mother's only child. She doesn't think she'll ever remarry." As the days passed, we found moments between my studying and his family obligations. Early morning coffees before my classes. Late-night phone calls when I finished my studies. A quick lunch between my rotations. Our time together was constrained by my schedule, but Anthony never complained. Instead, he brought me dinner during late-night study sessions, quizzed me on medical terms using flashcards, and always made sure I took breaks to breathe. "You know," he said one evening as we sat on a bench outside the hospital where I'd just finished a shift, "in the Army we talk about mission readiness. You can't be ready for the mission if you're burnt out." I leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but content. "Is that why you keep feeding me and making me sleep?" He laughed. "That, and I like seeing you smile when you're not stressed." The night before Anthony was due to return to Fort Bragg, we sat on the roof of my apartment building, a blanket wrapped around us as we looked at the stars. "I'm going to miss this," I admitted. "Miss you?" Anthony took my hand. "I was thinking, I get weekends off sometimes, and you need study breaks. Would you like to continue this, whatever it is? I could fly here some weekends and we can chat whenever we're both free." I turned to face him. "Are you suggesting a long-distance relationship between a medical student with no free time and a sergeant with an unpredictable schedule?" He smiled. "I'm suggesting that some things are worth making time for." I thought about the past 2 weeks, how he'd fit seamlessly into my chaotic life, how he'd supported my dreams instead of competing with them, how he understood the importance of my work because his own was equally demanding. We'd need a very detailed schedule, I said finally, a smile forming. Luckily, I'm excellent at time management. Anthony laughed, pulling me closer. And I'm good at following orders, Dr. Jimenez. As we planned our next meeting, I realized that for the first time since starting medical school, I was making room in my life for something beyond medicine. And somehow that didn't feel like a distraction from my goals. It felt like adding another vital component to my well-being. I didn't see him for 3 months, but when I did, I gave him my virginity in a hotel room during a 2-day break from the hospital. At the time, I thought we would be forever and that nothing was going to separate us. I was in what I thought love. With him, his care and thoughtfulness, I was learning that life worked best with a balance of strength, rhythm, and most importantly, love. Or so I thought. I loved him, but now he can rot for all I cared. I stared until the numbers blurred, not believing this was the same guy from my med school graduation, who had no problem joining me in Ohio when I landed there. I moved into my grandmother's home after she passed, and a year later I was pregnant. He was there when Becca was born, but he missed Carter and Luke's births. When he finally showed up, he was in uniform and apologized profusely. I was so mad I wouldn't let him have a say on their names and chose both with the help of my mom. Carter Arturo and Lucas John were perfect to me. Now I wish I had given them my last name. I emailed Crystal a picture of the results. She wrote back, I know. We received a copy today too. We'll talk soon. A warning. I told Tony that I needed space and he might be headed to Ohio. I will be in the morning. I'll contact you when I settle at a hotel. My mother will have the kids. I'm not ready for them all to formally meet yet. I scoffed. Neither was I. Crystal and I met up at a coffee shop with sticky tables and a bell that rang every time the door opened. Another reminder of Anthony. She looked like I do after a triple. Overtired, overcaffeinated, running on grit, I noted as we argued like women who've run out of euphemisms. Crystal claimed I was blowing up her family. I said her husband had lit the fuse. She said I was too vindictive when I told her my amended plan. I said boundaries look like cruelty to people who benefit from your kindness. She cried. I cried. We went quiet. I watched her slide her wedding rings on with hands that shook as she said, I'm staying. I can't throw my kids into the sea because he's a liar. I see, I mumbled and watched the doorbell ring as if the sound could bless anything. He's my kids' father too, and they need his support in every way. And I need him to pay for what he did to my heart. I slid off my engagement ring and placed it on the table. I won't be needing that, so perhaps you can return it to him. I scoffed. Now I know why he never wanted to discuss dates. He already had a wife. The next morning I was halfway through packing school lunches when the doorbell rang 3 times in a row, the kind of staccato that means someone thinks the sound entitles them to entry. Becca froze on the back stairs with a math workbook in her hands. Upstairs, I ordered, and the kids went, not because I raised my voice but because I only use that tone when blood knows better. I wiped peanut butter from my fingers and opened the door. Anthony stood on my porch in a black t-shirt that announced muscles and a pair of sunglasses he didn't remove, like he needed practice being a wall. His jaw looked smaller without a lie to hold it up. We need to talk, he said low. When I didn't move, he leaned forward as if the air between us was negotiable. Why were you in Florida? For a beat I thought he was joking. Then I saw the twitch in his temple. Because my parents booked a hotel with questionable carpet and promised to buy the kids too many keychains, I said. Why are you at my home? He took off the sunglasses finally, eyes bleary with a mix of rage and sleep debt. You followed me. You stalked me into that grocery store like some psycho ex. Crystal thinks you hired a PI. I laughed once because surprise still has reflexes. Crystal hasn't said that to me, but I'm sure she thinks what you've convinced her to think. His nostrils flared. He pointed past me, the gesture of a man who believes pointing can change a trajectory. You had no right to show up there and blow up my life. My kids. Our kids, I said, and the correction landed between us like a dropped instrument. And I didn't show up anywhere. Tampa has 2 grocery stores and 600 tourists buying sunscreen. The world isn't your private base, Sergeant Pretend. He stepped onto the threshold. I put my hand flat on the door and did not give him an inch. You're not coming in, I said. Funny, he said, mouth twisting, that you're suddenly big on boundaries when you had no problem inserting yourself into my marriage. The old me would have flinched, made room for his narrative the way you make room for a gurney in a narrow hall. The me who had learned to chart through storms just blinked. You inserted yourself into two lives, I said. That's not polyamory, Anthony. That's arithmetic performed with other people's hearts. And for the record, I don't need to stalk a man who used to FaceTime my belly. I ran into you when I had no idea you'd be there. Only 12 days before, you looked into that camera and said your tour was extended, and when you came to what you called home, we were going to talk about your retirement and setting a date. My parents decided to get away, so we flew to Tampa because they enjoyed visiting me there when I was in college. They hate it now because that is where my daughter spotted you and said your name, and you looked right in her face and denied knowing her and being her father, after spending 9 years treating her like the precious gift she is, Anthony. He set his jaw like a teenager practicing defiance in a mirror. I denied you, he said. Because you were trying to embarrass me. You embarrassed yourself, I said. And then you denied us and them. A muscle jumped in his cheek. You've got everyone thinking I'm some deadbeat. You're a liar who got caught, I said. The rest is a consequence. And now, Anthony, this conversation is over. There's a court order. You only communicate through counsel. Court, he sneered. You love that word. You think you can sue your way into being right after slapping that restraining order on me, their father. I don't need a judge to tell me the truth, I said. The order is so you don't show up unannounced and scare my kids before, during, or after school. From the staircase I heard a soft scuff. Becca, patient as a held breath, was watching. I moved my eyes back to Anthony. He leaned closer and his voice dropped. You think you'll win? You think Crystal's going to leave me? She's not. She knows how to keep a family together. And if she did leave, there's no way I'd run to you. Staying isn't the same as keeping, I said. And this isn't a competition you can win by outlasting. This is a set of obligations you meet or you don't, and I'm not one of yours. I realize that I never was. This door will never open for you to enter, and neither will I. He glanced over my shoulder, angling to see the life he'd acted in without audition. The lunch boxes. The shoes by the mat. The drawing taped to the wall of a stick-figure family with one parent's face carefully erased. You always wanted too much, he said, as if he needed one last needle to sew himself into the story. You wanted me home. You wanted honesty. You wanted... Yes, I said. I want what I was promised. For a moment the mask slipped. Fear, raw and teenage, flashed in his eyes. Then he shoved it down and found familiar ground. Attack. I could file for custody, he said. I could say you're unstable. That you took them across state lines to harass me. Say whatever you need to hear yourself say, I replied, steady. I'll send my lawyer the Ring camera footage of you on my porch in violation of the communication clause. I'll add it to the folder marked "Please stop teaching our children what intimidation looks like." And think about whether Crystal will appreciate having your affair babies under her roof before you file. He looked confused, then angry at being confused. From inside, the microwave beeped cheerful nonsense. The cat yowled at nothing. Life, rude as ever, proceeded. Go home, Anthony, I said, quieter now because sometimes softness is more terrifying than a shout. Schedule visitation through the court. Send your kids support and stop making me the excuse you hand yourself when you don't like your reflection. He put the sunglasses back on, a man suiting up. You don't get to tell me who I am. I'm not, I said. I'm telling you who I am. I'm the mother who comforts her daughter who got her heart broken by her father in the cereal aisle of a random store. I'm the doctor who can hold a line when everything's bleeding. I'm the woman who will not be stalked by a story you invented to survive your own cowardice. We stared at each other long enough to exhaust the performance. He stepped back. This isn't over, he said, the classic exit line of men who don't know how endings look. It is, I said. Just not the way you'd script it. He shook his head and walked down the path, shoulders squared to an audience that wasn't there. When his car peeled down the street, Becca came down the steps in a fast, quiet run and tucked herself under my arm. The boys barreled out of their room, ready to be reassured in the currency they trusted. Waffles and jokes. You okay? Becca asked into my side. I am, I said and meant it like a vital sign. I locked the door. I set plates on the table and kissed 3 foreheads that had nothing to prove. Outside, the wind moved gently, making the trees sway in a rhythm. Inside, I kept time with it, steady, steady, steady. After the kids got on their bus, I texted my lawyer a summary in the video clip. I sued Anthony Reardon for child support and fraud, And when his lawyer tried to pretend my life was a made-for-TV exaggeration, I sued Crystal too, for knowingly conspiring to hide assets once she decided to stay. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about paper and truth, the two things men like Anthony fear the most. I kept working. I caught babies and charted numbers and held mothers' gazes as they threaded themselves back into their changed bodies. Between contractions, I answered emails, sent bank statements, and learned legal words I never wanted to know. My mother made casseroles while crossing herself or throwing holy water on me. She had never liked that I had kids without marrying first, and to be told that Anthony married a woman while I was pregnant with our daughter almost crushed her. My father fixed the screen door each time he came to my house, the metal whining on its hinge like an apology he couldn't smith into words. He wanted to murder Anthony. In court, Anthony wore a suit too new for his posture. He tried to reclaim the army lie until the judge, a walnut-hued man with hair like steel wool and eyes like large tacks. Sir, fantasies will not help you here. Crystal sat beside him, spine a ruler, chin set. I could not look at her for long. My lawyer, an older woman named Ms. Rivera, walked the court through calendars, photos, and paternity. The numbers did their brutal work. The report said it all. Anthony was the father. He owed back support, future support, and penalties. The court set a schedule, garnished wages, and ordered therapy for the children. Crystal's name came up when the judge outlined the consequences of hiding income, obscure warnings wrapped in a clear threat. 3 men in matching navy suits with the same square jaw as Anthony, their ties a shade of sauce, filed in like a parade with money for a drumline. The gallery murmured. Even the bailiff's eyebrows climbed. I tapped my lawyer's arm. She leaned toward me. "Who are they?" I asked, gesturing to the neutral-faced men, now sitting in the gallery behind the defense table. "That's the Braswell family," Ms. Ramirez whispered. "As in Braswell's barbecue. They're huge in the South, including Florida, where Mr. Reardon resides. Don't be surprised if you see them in Ohio soon." I blinked. Anthony had introduced me to Braswell's ribs, and we had them several times in the hospital parking lot before, during and after night shifts, and more than once I'd gotten that sauce on my scrubs, but there was pure happiness in my bones after each bite. Billboards of their grinning patriarch dotted the interstate like lighthouses for hungry sailors, and that's all we saw on the way to Disney. I had no idea why these people were at this hearing. "Why are they here?" I asked. "Brace yourself," was her answer. "Discovery should have revealed it." It did, barely. My lawyer stood, smooth as a nurse snapping on gloves. "Your Honor," she said, "we have supplemental financial disclosures. The defendant is a beneficiary of the Braswell Family Trust, with distributions in excess of 8 figures over the last decade alone. He has obscured ownership through shell LLCs tied to the restaurant chain's real estate holdings because he's the son of Braswell's only daughter, Mrs. Rebecca and Braswell Reardon. We move to sanction and proceed with an amended support calculation and damages." I gasped. My lawyer gripped my arm, shushing me, but my head spun. This is why Anthony had insisted on our daughter's name. Becca Anais Reardon was named after his mother, and I didn't think the woman knew of our kids before all this mess blew up. I stared at Anthony, who wouldn't meet my eyes. He'd spent months pleading poverty, crying over child support like it was a death sentence. There he sat, born into smoke and sugar and a string of restaurants across most areas of the South. My lawyer called a forensic accountant who might as well have been a magician. She traced money like you trace a fetal heartbeat, steady and unavoidable. She showed income Anthony had forgotten, properties owned by shell companies that led back to the family trust, distributions timed to avoid quarterly estimates. Every slide was a contraction that brought the truth closer. Anthony's attorney sputtered about privacy and separate property, arguing that family money wasn't his money. My lawyer referred to the documents submitted by her and entered into evidence, which included trust schedules, K1s, and several photos of Anthony cutting a ribbon at a new location with a gray-haired man, who was also in the gallery, staring glumly ahead. He had a hand on his shoulder, pride beaming like neon. The judge, his hair the color of steel wool, his eyes focused, adjusted his glasses and dismissed the analyst and called, "Mr. Reardon?" The name drew blood. "Did you intend to mislead the court regarding your assets?" Anthony's mouth opened and closed. I didn't think it was relevant, sir. "In the matter of child support, Mr. Reardon," Judge Richardson said, voice dry enough to spark, Your ability to support your children is relevant. Is it true that Rebecca Braswell Reardon is your mother, Mr. Reardon? Anthony turned and stared at a woman impeccably dressed in an expensive dress and heels, and her face was flawless. She didn't look like a woman with a 36-year-old son. This was my kid's grandmother and I had never set eyes on her, but I swear my daughter was her doppelganger. She is, Anthony finally confirmed. I see. And are you a partner in your grandfather's business? Anthony whispered with his attorney inside. I am, Your Honor. The judge tartly said, Ms. Ramirez, please continue. In the second row, Crystal sat very still, her hands white at the knuckles. The Braswell's patriarch stared at the floor as if it might feed him an answer and patted the hand of the woman next to him. My client's relatives are in the restaurant business, Your Honor, Anthony's attorney said, too casual by half. Sauce, not stock portfolios, is Mr. Riordan's contribution. Any wealth is illiquid and does not include Mr. Reardon. The judge tilted his head. He owns 30% of the holding company, he said, glancing at the ledger. Mr. Reardon receives quarterly distributions. He drives a leased Escalade paid for by Braswell Hospitality LLC. He took a family vacation to Turks and Caicos last summer and deducted it as market research. Spare me the smoke show, Mr. Lane. I'm sure the defendant chokes on it enough. In the back someone snorted. The bailiff didn't bother to hush them. Then came the custody argument. My attorney didn't reach for fireworks. She had submitted calendars, school records and pediatric notes. She introduced immunization records for the children and their medical bill payments, signed by me, as well as their parent-teacher conferences and report cards, all of which were signed by me. She also submitted a photo from several ER visits, including one at 3 a.m. with Carter, who had woken at my parents' house with a raging fever. In that photo, my badge was clipped to my scrub collar because I'd come straight from catching a baby. Ms. Ramirez showed texts where Anthony canceled visitation with flags and emojis for cover, and receipts of him only sending $200 every few months, because he claimed he wasn't paid like civilians. She played the Ring camera clip of him on my porch, voice low and sharp, sunglasses and all, even with the TRO in place. Dr. Jimenez has been shown to be the children's primary caregiver with more than ample help, my lawyer said. She provides stability. She communicates. She does not weaponize access. The perpetually absent Mr. Reardon has demonstrated dishonesty, financial concealment and intimidation. We believe full legal and physical custody should be granted to Dr. Jimenez, in the best interest of the children, with a structured visitation schedule pending therapy and compliance. They gave Anthony his turn to paint me unstable. He tried. The judge watched him the way I watched a monitor when I already knew the baby was fine. The ruling came after lunch. The courtroom hummed with sauciness and nerves. On the matter of child support, Judge Richardson said, the court finds Mr. Riordan's prior disclosures incomplete and willful. We impute income based on trust distributions, business interests and lifestyle. Arrears are to be calculated from the children's births and payable immediately from the trust with penalties. Ongoing support will be set at a level commensurate with a beneficiary of a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and this will all be done within 10 business days. Additionally, the court awards Dr. Jimenez compensatory damages for fraud and litigation costs. Her gavel didn't fall, but the room felt struck. Now custody, he continued, and my heart put both hands on my ribs. The court awards Dr. Jimenez full legal and physical custody. Mr. Reardon will have supervised visitation transitioning to unsupervised only upon proof of completion of parenting classes and family therapy. All communication will occur through the court-approved app or social worker, whichever is deemed best for both parties. Any violation will result in sanctions up to and including suspension of visitation. Dr. Jimenez will have final decision-making authority for education and health care. A sound escaped me, small and fierce. Relief can be loud in your bones and quiet in the air. Behind me, my mother pressed her fist to her mouth. My father exhaled like a tire finally patched. He liked Anthony, respected his service to the country and hated everything that man had done to his daughter. I felt his relief. Anthony's attorney asked for a stay. Denied immediately. The patriarch leaned over, whispering with the desperation of a man whose brand just grew teeth. Crystal looked at me. In her face, a storm I recognized. Love wrestling with truth, a woman doing math with her heart. My lawyer squeezed my shoulder and went to file the orders like a nurse tidying instruments after a delivery. In the parking lot, Crystal approached me, her purse clutched high under her arm like a shield. We regarded each other across a gap the size of a life. "I'm not your enemy," she said. "I was never yours," I scoffed. "I hope he learns to be a man. I hope you find peace and that you will someday allow the siblings to meet. They're not going to disappear. Of course. My problem is not with them. I do hope your kids forget what he said about them in the cereal aisle," she said, "but expect compliance. Warren Braswell is not happy with Tony and demands to know your children. As does Rebecca. Your daughter is the oldest heir, so her world is about to change. Like me, you and your kids will want for nothing for the rest of your lives, Dr. Jimenez. And we'll figure something out about all the kids meeting and loving one another like the siblings they are." We shook hands gently and I sighed as I moved to my car. When I got home, I sat on the steps with my children's futures stacked in a manila folder on my lap, sunlight warm on paper that had clawed its way into being. "Mom," Becca asked, slipping her hand into mine, "what happens now?" "Now," I said, tasting hickory that wasn't mine and victory that was, "we make tacos. We finish your homework. We put the order on the fridge. And when you're older and someone lies to your face in a cereal aisle, you will know exactly what to do." That night, I taped the judge's order next to the school calendar with a pear magnet. The boys drew fireworks around the edges. Becca wrote court in block letters and then underneath in smaller script, truth. I sent a photo of the fridge to Crystal with no caption. A few minutes later, she sent back a picture of a half-eaten rib and a napkin smeared with sauce, and a 5-word caption that was more truce than apology. "You all deserved the win." I washed my hands, the imaginary scent of smoke lifting, and made tacos for 3 small mouths that believed me when I said they were safe. The rhythm of our life picked up where it had left off. Homework, bath time, bedtime stories. When the house quieted, I stood by the taped order and touched the paper like it might purr. In OB, we say the moment after the cry is when the work begins. We'd been crying for months. Now began the work of a new rhythm. Steady, steady, steady. Becca still asks why he lied. I tell her the truth is heavier than some people can carry, and when they drop it, they pretend it was never theirs. We make new truths in our house. That closeness is showing up, that love feeds and calls and says sorry like it's a language you can become fluent in, that family is the net you weave with people who've earned it. At work, I catch a baby and hand them to a mother whose face breaks open like sunrise, and I think about beginnings that don't know what will be asked of them. I move like a ghost inside someone else's storm and remember the day my own sky cracked, and how we learned to live anyway through a cadence of school lunches and bedtime stories. On my days off, my father teaches Luke to ride his bike in the driveway, his hand at his little back a constant. My mother braids Becca's hair and tells her the women in our family don't drown. They learn the tide and build boats and sue the sea if they must. Sometimes when a Florida ad plays on TV and the camera pans the Gulf, I taste salt and foil-wrapped pain. I put the kids to bed and sit at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and a schedule I made, and I whisper thanks to the small hard parts of me that refuse to be gaslit. I text Crystal a photo of the boys at soccer or Becca at dance class, and sometimes she sends back pictures of her babies like one of her youngest covered in spaghetti, and we are 2 women holding opposite edges of the same torn blanket, stitching what we can. I never got a chance to try on a wedding dress because we never set a date, so I didn't see the point. At first, I missed the ring that sat on my finger. The empty wedding planning book now lives in a drawer with the takeout menus. A reminder that a promise is only as good as the breath that speaks it. Elena visited me when the mess calmed. She's practicing in Chicago, and while she was here, she invited her cousin to lunch with us. As soon as he walked in the door, I saw his smile and blinked. This guy was beyond tasty. Joseph Pope greeted his cousin, then me, and sat at the end of the table. He said he owns several hardware stores in Ohio, and all offered installation services. I told him my profession and imagined a name change. Dr. Marisol Jimenez Pope. I thought it had a nice ring to it. And now so does my finger. The diamond ring Joe gave me 18 months later sparkled even when I had to wear it on my neck. We set a date, aiming for that fall, and I have already found a dress. Now, the other side of my bed was always warm, and Joe never minded when my side was cool when I was at the hospital. In OB, we say the body knows before the mind is ready to admit it. That day in the cereal aisle, my heart missed a beat and then found a better rhythm, and now all I can do is brace myself for the day my kids meet the Braswells. The kids were now 11, 8, and 7, and that family was losing patience more so since discovering my engagement. I finally caved and agreed to a neutral place, Disney World. We were leaving in a week, and it was something I was not looking forward to in any capacity. How did it go? Well, that's a story for another day.